Hi, it's Nicola Bird here with the Little Peace of Mind podcast, bringing you a completely fresh, new understanding to help you find freedom from panic attacks, anxiety and stress, and experience peace of mind from the inside out. So I'm really pleased to have Rachel Henke here with me today. Rachel is a long-time client, a colleague, a friend, someone who makes me laugh. I think you're going to enjoy the podcast today, basically. But the reason I wanted to get Rachel onto this call today is because she's got a new book coming out, or has just come out, probably as you're listening to this podcast, all about living fearlessly. And what a relevant title for the people who listen to this podcast, right? So I'll let Rachel explain a bit more about her background, but she is a successful businesswoman. That's kind of how I've bumped into her through working together on her business. And I know when we started working together, Rachel, we were working together talking all about business stuff.
We were.
And I remember that you used to say to me, I've got this underlying kind of level of anxiety that runs through my life, and especially the early morning awakening, the early morning anxiety. And I want to ask you more about that, because that's such a common experience from people who come through my programs or listen to this podcast, is that waking up first thing in the morning. You've been there too, right? But I know that was something for you. So I want to explore a little bit about that, and I want to talk about the book, and just for us to hang out really and see what it is that you've learned that's made such a big difference.
Yay.
So before we get on to the book, do you want to just tell people a kind of a very short summary of what kind of brought you down this journey? What brought you to this book?
I've always been a seeker. I've always been someone that reads non-stop, looking for solutions. I feel like I've been seeking my whole life. I think I started reading personal development books when I was probably about 16. So I've read a lot of them, and started off with Wayne Dyer, and then I found Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I just kind of read everything I could get my hands on to feel better. And my anxiety started when I was about 16, quite intensely. So that was part of it. But I was also a seeker. I was always looking for some kind of, I always thought there should be more. There must be something I'm missing. And that's how it's been. So I got into business about 15 years ago when I moved back from Jerusalem. I lived there for many years, and we moved to this tiny little village in the UK, and I started a home business so I could be home with my kids. And from there, I discovered the internet. Realised I didn't have to keep schlepping all around the country. So that's how I kind of got into the online world, and that's how we got connected over the years. I became a business coach and a marketing coach, did a lot of stuff like that, wrote a couple of books about business and online marketing. And then because of you, really, because I'm open clearly to, I was searching for this mythical flow for as long as I can remember. It's like I'm searching for almost nirvana for this flow, and I always thought I would find it. I would find this feeling, and I would know that I'm onto something. And I would feel almost high. It would be almost like the bliss of having a glass of wine when I used to drink wine. And I just didn't understand it. So it was kind of like I was touching the space of what we talk about a lot in this conversation, what I talk about in Living Fearlessly. But I had no idea how it worked, no idea where it came from. I pored over books like Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now and all of that stuff. And I gave myself a hard time. Trying to figure it all out. And then somewhere in there was also the piece about the anxiety. I'd done all kinds of therapies similar to yourself. I remember saving up all my money years ago. I was only about 20 and going for hypnotherapy. And I did all kinds of stuff, acupuncture, counseling. And I remember just feeling very deeply embarrassed of the fact that I had this kind of anxiety. It was mostly a social anxiety. I was super good at hiding it. Nobody knew I had it, or obviously some people would know sometimes, but I could really spin a yarn, as I'm sure many people with anxiety know. It's something that you try and hide often. It's like felt like a deep, kind of dark, shameful secret. And I got to the point, I suppose, when I was early 20s, where I started to be able to manage it better. And I really started to push myself to do things. And then And I did get better at it, but I would still freak out lots of times.
Feel the fear and do it anyway phase.
Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah, I did that for many years, and to some degree it worked, although it wasn't much fun.
No.
And then when I got into business in my early 30s, that's when I really had to kind of face up to a lot of my fears, and I was pushing through a lot of stuff, and it was really hard work. That's when I started speaking in public. I remember I used to be terrified to speak in front of, even at work for a group. And then I had an event where I spoke in front of 7,000 people. And I was fine once I was up there, but I remember thinking, gosh, it's no different.
Right.
So there were some clues, like I could see, this didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And I was very much, I'd come through it, the worst of it, but I was left with this residue of what I talked to you about, because obviously I knew you'd had anxiety too, and you were kind of coming through it too, and we would talk about it. And I had what I call morning dread, and it would just feel like, I don't know what I imagine dying must feel like, just this horrible feeling, this churning feeling in your stomach. And it was so normal for me that I just kind of was used to it. I didn't even talk about it much. Again, as I say, it's kind of, I felt it was a bit embarrassing, I suppose. But what happened was I got to the point with the principals in this conversation where I saw so much beautiful stuff, and things were really changing for me in lots of ways, where I was very inspired to write the book. I started writing the book in January, Living Fearlessly, because I just thought, 30 years I'm trying to figure this out. Yeah. And I know there are other books, but I knew there was something that I was seeing that was, with my kind of, my unique expression of it, combined with my story. And I had a bit of a turbulent childhood, which I think is what led to me having all this anxiety. And I was very inspired, and in so many ways I felt like it impacted my life so much. But it was June of this year, and I was in a coaching event, and we had to bring something to talk about. And I remember thinking, gosh, if it, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I get rid of this morning dread? Everything else, I'm hearing all these amazing stories. You're bombing about doing, on the motorway, and I don't know, whatever it is you didn't do before. And I'm thinking, why can't I get rid of
mine? Where's mine? Where's my insight?
Like, I got loads of insights. Like, I was remember. High as a kite so much of the time. It was quite funny, so blissful. But I just thought, what is going on with this morning dread? Like, I just want it gone. And I knew that the more I want it gone, the less it wants to go. Yeah. So I intellectually knew it all, but it was just terrible.
Yeah, like, just hang fire on that, because I have so many people in that situation. It's like, I know the way through this is an insight, right? I get that. So what do I have to do to make one happen? Because it's so frustrating when you can see other people around you getting it. And also you see that you're getting changes in certain areas of your life, but there's this one thing that's just like, you've got so much on it as well. It's like, I could just change this. Either one or two things. Either you have so much on it because it's like, I know this is the game changer. If I could change this one thing, everything in my life would change. Or you kind of go, I give up. There's just no way that's ever going to shift for me. I'm just going to have to learn to live with it, right?
Yeah. I kind of got to there.
Yeah.
And I was okay. I mean, I was a lot better at handling it. It wasn't as bad, I have to say.
I know. I remember that. I know that you were okay with it, because it's one of the, like, you never used to bring it to coaching calls.
No, because I didn't think there was any more to do.
No, there's just nothing. It just felt like there was no point even having the conversation. It was just like, it wasn't even worthy of conversation, because it was such a like just an everyday part of your life. Like, I know I have things like that too.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
Yeah, so it had lessened, and it did help that I understood to some degree why it was, so intense in the moment, and then 20 minutes later I could be making a cup of tea, doing an interview, and being absolutely fine. So it did help in that way, but it was still coming. And so anyway, because I had to bring something, I brought that, not because I had any expectation that it was going to really help.
So that's what you took to the retreat. That was with Michael Neal, right?
Yeah, that was with so it was we were there for days, and we talked about all kinds of things. So this was only, to put it into context, this was probably only about 10 minutes,
right,
that I talked about this,
right,
with my buddy. And I said to her, I talk about it in the book, in chapter 5 of the book, which is Dissolving Fear Effortlessly. I talk about my experience and how I'd always had this anxiety and the morning dread and all of that. And she said something, and at the time, I didn't even really kind of think that much of it. I mean, she's brilliant. She's a great coach. And I thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't think that much of it. And that's how it goes, right?
Yeah.
And then at 5 a.m. in Venice Beach, which is where we were, I woke up, and I just had this most amazing feeling of just bliss and love, and like everything. I just knew I was okay, like to a degree that I'd never felt before.
Wow.
And I suddenly just saw, and this sounds so basic to people that are trying to get this, I do apologize
in advance.
But I would say it just shows you that the more you let yourself be in it and just soak it up, and read whatever books call out to you, listen to whatever podcasts call to you, go to whatever things you want to go to, you never know. You really never know when it's going to happen, when the insight is going to happen, whether it's going to be a big, massive whopper or it's just going to creep up on you. But I suddenly saw, so the morning dread, like the anxiety, that's just a busy mind too. And I know everything points to that.
Yeah.
but you don't see it yourself. I could see it in areas where, say, I would get stressy. I used to get very stressy if I might get lost on the motorway or whatever.
Yeah.
I would be driving, but I'd be stressing, right? Like I might miss it, blah, blah, where am I going? So it really helped me with that, because I could see how my thoughts speed up, and I'm not thinking, I'm not in the moment. So I'm missing the sign, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's so clear. So I could see in other areas. I could see when I freaked myself out about money. I could see it in so many areas. But in this, there was still some element of, it's labeled.
Yeah.
This is morning dread. This is serious. All of that stuff is great, but it doesn't touch this. I don't know. I'm really broken in that way. Yeah. I'm really broken in that way, and it's just not going. And suddenly it just shifted for me in that I just saw through that conversation and through waking up and just having this insight, it was just so clear to me that it's exactly the same as everything else. And I don't need to go off on one when it happens.
That's so, just to kind of highlight that bit, it's so, like, we start, when we kind of fall into this conversation, there's something that kind of attracts us into it right at the beginning. And then we start to explore, and we start to see changes in some different areas of our lives. And this is what happened to me anyway. It's like, I could see changes happening over here. I could see that maybe I felt more peaceful, or I could see that some of my behaviors were changing, or some of my attitudes towards other people were changing. And then you move about in life, acting as if everything else is real, right? Like, so all we can ever do is walk out in our life as if everything that's in front of us is real. But I noticed that things were changing, and although they still look real, they look different than they did yesterday, right? And then what I think is, this is what kept happening for me, is I kept bumping up against stuff that I thought was just real, normal, the way it is, solid. And then I'd have a conversation with somebody else who kind of had a deeper grounding than me in this, and they would go, hang on a minute, do you think blah blah blah? And you go, well, yeah, obviously. And then they'd be like, are you sure? And then you'd be going, oh my god, there it is again. It's like something else that I've been thinking is true and real and solid, and it's the same as the other thing that I saw. Like, it says, you start to get a feel, like what I think in this understanding is, you get an insight in this little area, and then you get an insight in this little area, and you get an insight in this little area, and then at some point you see, oh my god, this is a principle that applies everywhere. And it just feels stupid, right, with an insight like that, but it's simple when you see it, and it's so not when you don't.
Yeah. Oh, I feel stupid every day, I think, when I see stuff. I mean, it's just, I'm getting used to it.
Yeah. So that's huge. So what's your experience with the morning dread thing now? Do you ever get it? Does it not come back? Like, what's...
Yeah, I don't get it to that degree at all. But because I have really felt that it's just a busy mind, I don't now treat it any differently than when I get a bit worked up in the car because I missed a turn, or because, like, I've gone to the next phase with that too, whereas with the other stuff I was kind of saying it's okay to, like, it's okay to just feel a bit off. So what? Like, it's okay if I miss the sign, and so now when I'm driving, I'm just much more able to be slower mentally, and to say, okay, you don't have to go into a big panic. You can just go around the roundabout and take the turn. So I do the same thing. So it's not like I never even think about it. Like, it's still probably my most vulnerable time, the morning, but it just doesn't get me. Like,
that's the key thing, though, isn't it? It's like all those years of searching, and we think that when we find it, it's just going to be gone forever and we'll never experience it again. And that looks like the solution. And yet what I keep being reminded of over and over again, talking to you, reminds me, it's not that it goes, it's that your relationship with it changes, so it doesn't freak you out anymore.
Yeah.
Then you're free to have it or not, because who cares? Like, you don't necessarily like it, but it doesn't freak you out anymore. That's what the insight does, I think. It shifts your relationship with it so it doesn't scare you so much.
It does. And then what happens is, because you don't care, you don't get it.
Yeah.
For some reason. So I really don't get it anyway. I mean, I don't get it like I got it before. Now I would get maybe the normal, which I just see as normal human behavior, where your thoughts start speeding up, but we notice them. And I just, instead of saying, oh, it's the morning dread, why me?
Yeah. Got to sort this out. Yeah.
Now I just kind of think, oh, whatever, and it just kind of dissipates. It does dissolve. That's the thing. It does dissolve. That's why I'm so fascinated with the fearless. Yeah. That's what always drew me from the beginning, this fearless idea of our relationship to the fear means that it's almost, sometimes you just don't feel it at all when you would have done before, because of how you are relaxed about it. Mm. And even if you do feel it, you just understand it so well that it's not this big thing. It's not a different thing. It's just like a happy or a stressy or
any other emotion.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the book then, because that's what we should be talking about. Not all this stuff, Rachel. Talking about the book, right? But so helpful, I think, to put it in context, because you're writing this book from a perspective of one who knows. right? Who's had this in her bones and has navigated life regardless anyway, and had it be hard and like, you know, had a lot of important looking fear, and now having a completely different relationship with business and life and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So tell me, I asked you before the call, but then I said, hang on, let's wait till we're recording this so that we can have the discussion properly. But like, so the book is called Living Fearlessly.
Yeah.
Tell me the full strap line and explain, so that kind of puts the book into context.
Yeah. I chose a long strap line because I really wanted to get this message across, that it's different to the usual spiritual type book, or different to the kind of pushing through the fears. So it's a simple guide to living the life you want without the need to fight your fears, break through blocks, or become a battle-hardened warrior.
Right.
And the reason I chose that was because, to me, that, I mean, I obviously asked people what resonated with them as well. I did kind of do a little bit of research to see what people could understand. But that, to me, is what I've spent these 30 years doing. It's fighting fear. And then once I got into understanding personal development, I got really advanced with it. I was breaking through blocks and learning all these different systems about how to fix myself and sort out these blocks. And it came to me, like, when I read things about resistance, this is a big one, resistance. There's so much talk in personal development, and it's so popular to talk about resistance as if it's this real terrible enemy that stops us creating and stops us, you know, writing or living or speaking. And I just saw so much of this because I write anyway. I used to be able to tap into that, but I didn't know why. And now I see it so clearly in so many areas of my life, and I see it with my clients when they're trying to create stuff.
I was going to say, who's the book for? Like, when you talk about, you know, it's people, it's for people who are trying to be up to something in the world, right?
Yeah, I think the people that I mean, I wanted to get this understanding out there in the book in a broader way than, you know, obviously just being able to work with clients and who finds you and so on online and that kind of thing. So it is a book that I believe anybody can benefit from, which is nothing. I would never have said that before because I wrote The Niche Expert.
Living fearlessly, right? It's like the link with fear, like, I don't know, fear, anxiety, stress is so prevalent in our culture at the moment that, yes, pretty much applies to everyone.
Yeah, like if you're alive, you know, I say in the introduction, if you're alive, you qualify, you can probably benefit. You can probably see something for yourself. And the book is, because it's not about one little area. Well, little is obviously huge in this conversation, but because it's not just about anxiety, or just about business. It's my journey, really, and I've weaved it through the book, and it's quite a size because I've covered everything new that I've seen. It's sort of like my year of living fearlessly, really.
Yeah.
And I've weaved in a lot of personal story, and I've weaved in stories of clients and different things that I've seen and my insights. But I've also pointed a lot to what I've been taught by you and Michael Neal and all the wonderful teachers, what I've seen, but with my kind of what I've really seen.
Well, that's what I love about it. It's so, having read it, it's such a unique, like you said earlier, it's a unique expression. And that's what I think is so lovely. One of the lovely things, lots of lovely things about the book, but one of the lovely things about it, it's really relatable, Rachel. I think the way that you've written it, because sometimes, you know, there's like different people you can hear in this conversation and different writers you can read and they make sense.
Yeah.
Like when I read it, there was such sort of relatability to it. I think it's going to be really helpful for people who are maybe at the start of their journey with this conversation, and people at a deeper level as well. But certainly as a kind of introductory way of getting your head around what we talk about in this whole podcast and what Rachel teaches all her clients, I think it's a really good like starting point to introduce you because of that, because of the stories, because of the clear way you describe, because, you know, both of us are pretty early on into this journey, really, when you think about the people who've been teaching it for decades.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it more accessible.
Yeah, I think that was why I wanted to write the book now. I've got a plan to write. I think I'm going to write a series of books on specific topics. Yeah. But this is the book that it's kind of like, my baptism into into the principles, and I've got 10 chapters in it, and each one addresses a different thing and about the journey. And it's, the first section of the book is the fearless paradigm, where I talk about how it works, and I've really tried to break it down into a way that is simple but has some detail, which is kind of my style. So I've done that, and then the middle section of the book is fearless transformation, where I talk about how I see things differently now, and what transformed. I tell some funny stories about how I used to have my bank account in a sock when I was quite young in Israel, and like my relationship with money. I talk about money a lot in the book because I think it's something that people get so freaked out about.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about that to start with, then, because that isn't something we've covered on the podcast so far. So, like, I've got clients who are like, but I've got to go to work because I've got to pay the bills, and if I don't, I can't sit at home being anxious, and I need to be out there doing stuff. And so I've got that, like, clients in that position, and then I've got clients who are business owners and who worry 24/7 about the money going in and out of their bank accounts. Or not even aware they're worrying about it, but it's there in the back of their mind constantly, and everything is done around that. Like, what have you seen around the whole area of money and got to pay the bills, and that kind of urgent feeling that can come when we feel a lack?
Yeah, I've seen a lot around that. I mean, I've had a lot of stress around money, and I still do sometimes. And I kind of, like I said about the morning dread, I just see it now. I just think, oh, there you go again. This is kind of one of your things that you like to do.
Like your rumble strip.
And I think money is one that I can see really clearly some days. I'll just be totally honest. I mean, I'm not in the book, I'm not saying, look, I've got it all sorted out about money. Like, money is I think when you're in business as well, because we think about money, we naturally have to address money so much because we're selling things, and we're making things, and we're pricing things. Yeah. And so I've worked in this area of pricing and selling high-end coaching programs and doing all of that stuff. So I think I'd forgotten how little some other people think about money compared to us businessy people, or people that really get ourselves in a panic about money. And I think if there's something just simple I can kind of share, it's don't take it so seriously. Like, if you're in a panic about money, then be in a panic about money, and then just calm down and do something to try and make some. And you just have more access to that mental freedom, to the creativity. And that's what I talk about in chapter 8, about accessing I call it your wisdom well, your infinite potential. It's like what I know now, I just know that if I'm in a panic about money, I'm just shooting myself in the foot because I can't think clearly.
Yeah.
So
that's it. Like, if the only thing we ever learned, I think, in this conversation, this has been so helpful to me, and it catches me out again and again, even now. If we can get clear about when we're confused, that's all we need to do, right? So this is what I've been seeing loads of this recently, and my mentor at the moment, Aaron Turner, is so helpful at pointing this out to me over and over and over again. And so we move about in life, and then we get ourselves in a tears about, say, for example, money, right? So it's like, oh, there's not enough money coming in, or maybe there won't be enough money when I retire, or maybe this, that, and the other, and like whatever the concern is about money. And we have and then we start like researching pensions, or like signing up for money management programs, or like creating forecasting, like really detailed forecasting figures. Like, well, if 3% of this and 2% of that, then this is where
I've got to say, you win by far when you go off on one.
Oh yeah, completely. But the thing is, in that state, there are really clear like rumble strips, right? When we're starting to go off, which is like, if I find myself starting to create really detailed spreadsheets or looking at money management things with a feeling of, I've got to sort this out, right? Like that's a rumble strip, right? Like if you wake up in the morning and your alarm clock says 4 a.m. and you're worrying, that's a rumble strip, right? You can look at the clock and go, oh, well, it's 4 a.m., right? And I don't feel good. Like but when we don't catch it, we think that the information that we're considering and our thinking that we're having in the moment, we're like, oh yeah, okay, like bringing it in for a cup of tea and welcoming it and indulging it, and with no idea that it's contaminated.
Yeah.
So we think we're clear when we're confused.
Yeah, and that's exactly the same with the morning dread. It's the same with when you're arguing with your husband. It's the same with...
Yeah. So you wake up at 4 a.m. and you're like, oh, just this overwhelming fear of dread at the thought of the day ahead. And we don't think, oh, hang on a minute, I'm confused. Best ignore myself for a little while. We think, oh, right, okay, everything we think is true. So like what Aaron keeps pointing out to me and I keep seeing over and over again, it's like, if you know you're confused, you're not really confused, right? You're clear.
Yeah.
But the danger comes, and if you're clear, and that's fine. And you know you're clear because there's a feeling to it. And if you're not clear, one or two things happen. Either you know you're confused, in which case you're clear really, and you know to disbelieve yourself.
Yeah.
The dangerous bit is when you're not clear, when you're confused, but you think you're clear.
Oh gosh, yeah.
You've got it now. Yeah. You think, no, there is a money problem because I can see that this money coming in here and is predicted to be less than the money that I need. And that is a fact.
Yeah.
You can put me in front of a lie detector and I would say, that is a fact.
Yeah.
That is something that you should be concerned about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that looks true, right? And we know it's not true because of the feeling. I don't feel good.
Yeah. I think if there's something that I can share that was quite early on for me that really frustrated the hell out of me with you and Michael, and I was trying to understand what you were saying. It's like they're speaking like this foreign language about money. Like, I'll share it because I know it's just I think it sometimes is tricky to see. Like I thought that you guys were saying that I'm supposed to be okay if I've got no money, right? Now, okay, on some level I can be okay if I've got no money, but I couldn't understand what you were really trying to point to, which was if you've got no money or whatever. And I talk in the book about that when people say no money. I mean, what's no money? Like there's rarely no money.
It's the bag lady all women have, right? I'm going to end up as a bag lady under the bridge and my kids will be scavenging in bin bags for food, right? That's where we go to in it.
So you used to talk about that and that used to scare the hell out of me.
I know, you wouldn't even let me talk about it.
I would be like, don't say that, I don't want to talk about that. So
I remember.
So if there's something I can share that I have moved on from, that I have seen, it's that, it's not that we're saying that you have to be okay without money. It's that you'll know what to do if you need money. It's like you'll figure something out like you always did. Like when my bank account was in a sock, because I lived in Israel, it was way before, I was only about 19. I didn't have a visa to work there, and I used to work and all kinds of stuff, but I didn't have the setup. I didn't have a bank account. I didn't have all this stuff that we supposedly need to be okay. And I tell that story in the book, and I suddenly thought of it, and it reminded me how funny it was that because I didn't think I had to have a bank account, even though I'd worked in a bank in Jersey, it was perfectly okay for me. I had no thinking about whatsoever. I used to put my money in the sock. I used to pay the rent. I used to do stuff. And then, the contrast of that was so clear to me that it was just these preconceived ideas of what we think we need. So I think if there's something that really shifted for me with the money, and I'm not saying we're never going to be in a panic about money, because the more we do stuff with money, the more we're in the money conversation all the time. But you become okay with it. It's like it's knowing that your insights, your wisdom well is there for you all the time.
Yeah.
But you can access it more easily when you're not in this massive panic or doing these big spreadsheets and trying to calculate how many.
I want to share something I've just seen over the last couple of days about the whole money thing, right, which is really cool, and then we'll come back to the book. But as we're on the topic, I think this is such a fascinating one. So I realised over the last few days that what I've been trying to do at the moment, my husband's not working, so that I can try and build up a little peace of mind and see if I can replace his income and all that kind of thing, right? So what I've realised I've been doing is recently is we've been looking at the kind of the household income and then reverse engineering it, right? So it's kind of like, well, then we need this many people to come into the program, and we need this many people to come onto the webinar that I do, and we need this many people to do this, and looking at the numbers and going, this project, A Little Peace of Mind, is not sustainable, because it's a really expensive business to run, right? So every client that comes in costs me a huge amount of money to bring them into to bring them into the business, to teach them, share them, support them, all the rest of the way through. And with reverse engineering it, I just couldn't figure out a way of doing it so that it would meet the numbers that were required at the end. Mm-hmm. And so I've been like experimenting with all different ways of helping people, serving people, and, you know, trying to change this percentage and that percentage with my business head on. And what I've seen over the last few days is a huge shift for me, in that, well, like the whole lightness around it, like realizing there's something that's been quite heavy all the way through, which is kind of like thinking about business stuff, and realizing that was quite heavy, and how much lighter that could be. And that was a lot to do with the conversations I've had with Tanya Elfasy over the last few weeks. But one of the things I saw that was really cool is that I had lunch with Robin Sharbit earlier this week, who's, if you don't know him, he's a wonderful, wonderful business, one of my favorite mentors ever. He's just a lovely man. And he was saying to me, Nick, if you just show up and do good work, the money will take care of itself. And with that, the whole, I suddenly saw that all the reverse engineering I'd been doing was me operating out of confusion and not in a clear state and all the rest of it. And it all kind of fell away. And I'm like, do you know what? I love my clients. I'm just going to show up, and do you know what? I'm going to show up. I'm going to do my best work. I'm going to introduce this to as many people as possible. And you know what? And I'm going to use the G word, right? God can decide how much I get paid for that. And then what if it wasn't on me to decide, like, how much money comes out of this at the end, and whether this is going to support my lifestyle and all the rest of it? But like, what if I just show up, living fearlessly, engage fully in what I'm up to right now, see what opportunities appear in front of me, because I have no idea about that, and let God take care of the money, and we'll figure it out. Yeah. So 6 months from now, at the end of our experiment that me and my husband have got going on, either there'll be money in the bank account or there won't. And like you say, something will come to me then. And it's so huge, Rachel, I can't tell you, like, all this heaviness around the whole money, and like, instead of thinking about, you know, am I getting paid enough to do this, or how do I price this, and all the rest of it, and I'm just going, you know what, I'm just going to do the best I can with what I've got and love every minute of it, and whatever with the money stuff. That's huge for me. You know, that's huge for me.
It is huge. And it's what occurs to me so many times. I mean, okay, we have these insights that are massive game changers that we haven't seen before, like the morning dread and so on, and the money. When I finally understood, you weren't saying I'm supposed to be happy being a bag lady. It was very, very difficult for me to deal with. What occurs to me is I see, and I don't know how it is for other people, but I think from talking to clients, it's the same. We see the same insight so many times in different clothes.
Yeah.
And we get it, and we think we get it, and then we get it one way, and then we haven't got it, and then that's why it's so funny. And this is what's so lovely when you've got a coach, or you're in this conversation, you've got fellow coaches, and you talk to them, like you said, one of them says, but do you think that it's like, oh, and you can see so clearly in some areas. And then, so it's like for you with that, that is the essence to me of living fearlessly.
Yeah.
Now, I certainly don't do it all the time, but I know what it's like. I can get into it quicker.
But you know what it comes from, Rachel? I think fundamentally, and this again is something you point to in the book, is that knowing that we're okay no matter what.
Yeah.
Like when we know that underneath all the noise and underneath all the rowdy thinking and all the rest of it, that there's something that has infinite wisdom, great ideas, is creative, clear, has an ability to move forward when required, that has access to ideas with built-in to-do lists that are just really obvious and easy, and that can never be taken away, then I can get to the end of my 6 months, for example, or you can be sit there in the middle of morning dread, right? Or struggling to write your book, getting the next chapter out or whatever. And if we know fundamentally that unbroken wholeness is there underneath all of it, then that's what lets me know that no matter what the circumstances are at the end of the 6 months, for example, which again is an arbitrary number, but there you go.
Yeah.
Right? That I'll have access to pure wisdom in that moment then, just when I need it. And there's something about that foundational piece of knowing that you're okay no matter what, that allows you to travel the world, take risks, build businesses, do things that might be scary, all the rest of it, because you've got solid ground under your feet.
Yeah, totally. And I think that the big thing that I hear in that is when we get lost in our clever thinking, because you're very clever at that reverse engineering stuff.
Yeah.
Like I kind of lose the plot after a while, so I'm less likely to go as far as you because I'm not as good at it. And I think we need to watch that sometimes. Like where we're very good at certain things, we can get
intellect,
old habitual patterns that we have that we think are the way it needs to be. We can really get lost in them. But the big thing for me in that is when we remember that it's all about now. That's what living fearlessly is to me. It's all about being in the present, which is a total spiritual message that I've been reading since I was a child, but not really understanding how to explain or how to do. It's like when we're in that future fearful thinking about the numbers and the this or whatever it may be, we tend to be missing the joy of the showing up and the doing and the living the day.
Now you see, but the thing is with that is people hear that as a prescription, right? So that's like mindfulness, right? So it's like we got to focus on the now. And what I see as a beautiful thing about this conversation is that everybody gets it intellectually that being in the present moment is always the best place to be. And in fact, there isn't anywhere else you can be, right? Like, you have this search for flow, and flow by definition is when you're totally absorbed in the moment and you lose yourself, right? We're all looking for that in our experience of life.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we think that's a state we have to get to. So we have to do mindfulness, or we have to bring our attention back to being in the present.
Yeah.
And actually, that's our default, and it's a wonderful byproduct of this conversation. It's just what happens naturally is you start to fall out of all of that future-based worrying thinking, and you just happen to be here now more often without having to try. Like it's everything, like, and you as a self-acclaimed personal development junkie, right, and other people on this who are listening here, and I know that's typical for a lot of people, have been seeking this missing something all the time.
Yeah.
It's like that's what the principles points us to so beautifully, is like the thing that you've been seeking all the time is right there for the taking right now in this moment, and you don't have to do anything to make it happen.
Yeah. It's the best thing ever. This is like, there's no hard work.
There's nothing. There's nothing.
The only hard work is believing there's no hard work.
Well, I think the hardest work you ever have to do in this conversation is the moment it catches your eye in the first place. Right? So that can be when you're 55, when you're 14, when you're 6, when you're 20, whatever, right? For me, early 40s, and something caught my eye. That's it. It's a done deal from there on in. And we can make it hard work. You and I have both made it hard work. Like, I need to understand it. I need to get it more, all that kind of thing. So we can make it harder work, but essentially job done, because it's like we've caught a little light out of the corner of our eyes that we can't never not see again. And we're drawn to it because it's truth. And so we just look more in the direction of that. We keep catching it out of the corner of our eye. And more like, it's like the door opens wider and wider and wider all on its own. We don't have to do that just by default. That's the way the door's designed. It just keeps opening, and we get to see more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
Without having to do anything. It's like something else is opening the door for you.
That's my favourite bit of the whole deal.
It blows me away every time that there's less to do than we think. Well, we don't even have to open the door. No, that's taken care of for you. Maybe not on your time schedule. Probably not for any of us on our time schedule, right? We're like, come on, open the damn door, right? We can. He's got the door open in that particular area, and I'd love to see it more. And we're not in charge of how fast the door opens, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I digress. Back to the book.
No, it's wonderful. That's the essence of the book. So,
what's your favourite chapter, Rachel, in the book?
My favourite chapter is Full Out and Fearless.
So summarise that one for us without being a spoiler.
Yeah, it's what I've tried to do in the book is build on the different elements that I've seen through, what happens when you shift yourself. Excuse me, I had a horrible cold. What happens when you shift yourself, and then how you everything around you begins to transform as a result of it. And then Full Out and Fearless is it's the chapter before the last. I mean, my last chapter, Loving Fearlessly, is beautiful too. I love that too.
Yeah.
That's all we need to do. Like, if we're feeling more love, we're not in fear. That's kind of game over. But in terms of being creative and loving creating stuff and business and all of that, the Full Out and Fearless is about when you see that you are fully equipped to be fearless. You're fully equipped. Your door is going to open. You are designed to have ideas.
That way.
You're like an idea machine, and you just can show up. Again, as I've been pointed to by you guys, you just show up and you do stuff, and that's being fearless. Because I was talking to some clients yesterday, and I was just pointing to the plug that they're plugged in. They're plugged in. They don't need to go around like there's some of them are going around. They're trying to assemble all the cables before they do whatever it is they need to do.
Yeah. It's like you're already plugged in.
You're plugged in. So it's kind of like building on chapter 8, which is about pointing to the infinite potential and how we have all of that. But the Full Out and Fearless is when we really see for ourselves that we are fully equipped. And because, especially I think for people that are trying to create stuff and do stuff in the world, and not necessarily business, but whatever it is they're trying to do, career-wise, whatever, because so much of it does feel like it's on the other side of fear.
Yeah.
This, for me, is the key to not having to push through and make yourself do loads of stuff you don't want to do. It's the key to it dropping away, you seeing that whether you're fearful for a minute or not really doesn't matter. You don't need to push through it because you see it on such a deep level. It's not fear. It's not scary anymore.
Yeah, it's like we need a new word for it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I kind of tussle about with how to explain it sometimes because it's so amazing. Yeah. But it's this effortless action, inspired action that comes. And, when we've been working together, after the book was completed, I had this idea about how to help people really practically apply this. And I'm calling that now the Living Fearlessly method, because I think for all, it is about seeing, it's about insights. It can be so practical.
Yeah.
As we've both seen, when you really know how to operate your software.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's not, I mean, we're hearing Rachel talk about businesses, but as you said earlier, it's like, if you want to create a lovely family life, if you want to create a relationship, if you want to write a book, if you want to create art, if you want to, I don't know, book your next holiday, like whatever it is, it's like bringing, creating, being out in the world and just doing what it is that we're all up to. Like the principles that we're pointing to, or Rachel points to in her book, apply whatever it is you're trying to create, even if it's something that looks really mundane and normal, like creating a family life that's enjoyable, right?
Yeah. It's everywhere. It's across the board. It's like, you're making vegetable soup.
Yeah.
Something that's easy, like we have it in areas where it's really easy for us, and we just completely discount it and we think it's nothing. And then we've got these areas where we think it's really hard, and we don't understand that all of that stuff is available to us there too.
Yeah, so it's like thinking of something that's like, if you think of something that's so simple for you to create. For me, I'm a terrible cook. Vegetable soup's probably the worst example I could think of. For me, creating a nice website, right? Like, it's the same for other people of creating vegetable soup. It's really easy for me to do. But like, it's possible to have that degree of effortlessness and flow and ease in other areas of your life where you struggle right now. And that's what I think you're pointing to. And that's so freeing. Rachel, we could talk for hours.
We could.
And we have. Well, days, in fact, in the past. But where do people go if they want to get hold of a copy of the book and want to find out more about what it is that you do? Where should they go? And I highly recommend, by the way, I've read the book, really enjoyed the book. Wouldn't have got Rachel on the podcast if I didn't think it would be of incredible value for you guys to go read the damn book, right?
Thank you. I do hope.
Go and find out more about it.
Yeah. Well, my website is livingfearlessly.co.uk. There will be a book page there, but the specific book page with more details is /book. So livingfearlessly.co.uk /book. I'm hoping that the book will be available in paperback and Kindle. It will definitely be available in Kindle immediately. But I think hopefully in both, and it will be on Amazon all over the place. So, so you can get it direct or go to the page first and find the buttons there and click through.
I think it's so cool that you're taking this out to people, all sorts of people all around the world that are going to benefit from this book. And I'll put the links underneath this podcast on the Little Piece of Mind blog and add it to the resources. I've got a whole books area on the site, so I'll make sure that it's up there as well, Rach, because I think it's a bit of a must read.
Thank you so much. I really do hope it's going to touch a lot of people and just shift them from that kind of...
Doubtless, just because the spirit in which it's written, if nothing else, Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed hanging out with you again.
Thanks, Nick. It's a pleasure, always.
Cool. If you're curious to find out more about what I've been talking about on this episode, the best place to start is to go to alittlepieceofmind.co.uk, and there you'll find my audio, Freedom from Anxiety, and you can listen to that. Is the best place to start to get some of this understanding into your own bones so it can start making a difference to your life. Until next time, I'll speak to you later.